Hi again, and welcome to the Big Blue Breakdown as we go over the three key matchups to watch, as well as a status report for the New York Giants as they prepare to take on the Seattle Seahawks on the road Sunday in Week 5 of the NFL season. I'm Paul Dottino. Well, we know where the Giants sit right now at 1-3. Seattle's exactly the opposite at 3-1. Now, as far as the Giants are concerned, well, they've got a significant injury to deal with. In concussion protocol, as we speak to you on Friday morning, wide receiver Malik Nabers. And it certainly does not look very promising for him to be able to play. So the Giants will likely have to elevate Jalin Hyatt into a starting role as one of the Giants' three starting wide receivers to go with Wan'Dale Robinson and Darius Slayton. Now, Hyatt feels very confident about this spot. He's been working very hard for this spot. Says it's an opportunity for him to really shine. And Daniel Jones and him have been working so hard during the offseason. I don't have much doubt that those two will be able to connect and have some chemistry and perhaps have an easier time than some might think as Hyatt comes in off the bench, because he really has not been utilized very much through the first month of the season. That is the most significant of the injuries that the Giants have to deal with. And again, you have to assume that Nabers will not be available and move forward with that. There are a couple of other bumps and bruises and guys who are in limbo as we approach Friday afternoon's practice, but we won't discuss those in particular because it's really the Nabers injury that is the most significant in terms of having an impact on this game. Now, for Seattle, they have 19 different players on their injured list as of Friday morning. And so that also is a conversation that really is not worth having a whole lot of time spent on. To be frank with you, as we look at it, as of earlier this week, after their loss to the Lions 42-29 in Detroit, Seattle had as many as 6 different starting players on defense who were nicked up. And that's incredibly significant. 4 of those players missed the game. 2 of those players had token appearances and then had to come out. And so the entire week has been filled with doubts and questions in Seattle as to what they are going to do. Now, new coach Mike Macdonald, remember now, Pete Carroll is out in Seattle. Mike Macdonald, former Baltimore Ravens assistant, is now in charge. He's got Ryan Grubb as his offensive coordinator, Aiden Dirty as the defensive coordinator, and Jay Harbaugh as his special teams coordinator. Now, the one thing to remember about Macdonald, and we've been told this by the people in Seattle, is that he is, like most NFL coaches, very, very sketchy when talking about injuries. So the fact that there are 19 players Friday morning on the Seattle Seahawks injury list, we really don't know how to interpret that. They had some guys in Seattle practice some last week and then not make it into the game. So you really can't tell what kind of chess match that Macdonald is playing in Seattle. But here's what we can tell you. There are 3 very significant players on the Seahawks defense that need to be addressed because we kind of have a pretty good idea of what's going to happen with them. We start with Byron Murphy, their first-round draft pick, defensive tackle, nose tackle actually, in their scheme. Terrific talent. That's why he was a first-round pick. He's got a hamstring, and to this point has not practiced at all this week. So you would assume that the odds of him playing are not very good, if at all. Julian Love, the former Giant and the free safety on the Seahawks, suffered a thigh injury, did not play in the second half against the Lions, but he did get back to full practice on Thursday, so you'd have to feel that the arrow is pointing up on Julian Love to play. The Giants know all about him. He is a very smart and instinctive player. He's got a nose for the ball. He makes plays. The Giants wanted to keep him. We already know the story. But he wound up in Seattle, wanted to come back to the Giants. But because of the timing of the contract offers, things fell through, and he wound up becoming a Seahawk. All right, so he's a very important part of what the Seahawks do. Remember, he last year was named to the Pro Bowl in his first year with Seattle. Now, the other very important player here to talk about is pass rushing left outside linebacker Boye Mafe, limited because of a knee injury. Now, he is a very, very important part of their defense. For example, let's go over a couple of the numbers here for Mafe. He's already got 3 sacks and 6 quarterback hits. Okay? He's doing extremely well in pressuring quarterbacks, even if he doesn't actually get the sack or the hits, which in itself, those numbers are very solid. He's also causing a lot of issues in terms of pressure and in terms of defending the run. So that could be a very important injury that the Giants will either be able to exploit if Mafe doesn't play, or if he's a bit gimpy and isn't himself, the Giants may want to do whatever they can to try to attack him. We should mention that Leonard Williams, former Giants defensive lineman, is practicing on a limited basis. He has a rib injury that has hampered him for a bit, but we all know how good Leonard Williams is, how tough he is, how durable he is. I would expect that Leonard Williams will do everything he can to face the Giants on Sunday. Not that there was bad blood. Remember, they actually asked Williams about trading him to Seattle before they made the deal, going back last season. So, in any event, that's what we're looking at here in terms of Seattle. Also, it does bear noting they just signed 42-year-old offensive tackle Jason Peters to their practice squad. Last year, played in 8 games with 2 starts. People had thought that he was going to retire, but apparently he wants to give it another go. Guy's been in the NFL for over 20 years. I don't expect him being on the practice squad for a couple of days to be elevated into the lineup. But that is worth noting because early in the season, the Seahawks are already down to their 3rd right tackle, and it's 6th round draft choice Stones Forsythe. We will talk about him a little bit more in just a bit when we get to our 3 key matchups to watch for this game, because undoubtedly that is going to be one that the Giants will want to keep an eye on. All right, that's a status check in terms of the state of the Seahawks. It is also very important to notice that Geno Smith is having just an unbelievable start to his season. 2nd in the NFL in completion percentage at over 72%. 2nd in yards at nearly 1,200 yards through the air. He's also 2nd in attempts and 2nd in completions, which doesn't surprise you if you understand the rankings of those other 2 key passing stats. 4 touchdowns on the season against 4 interceptions, and he has been sacked 11 times. Kenneth Walker, he's as good as they come when he's able to play. Much like several Seattle running backs of the past, he has had injury problems, but for the season, averaging 5.7 yards per carry, 6th in the National Football League. He has run for 4 touchdowns. That's tied for 4th in the league. 32 carries for 183 yards on the season. And Zach Charbonnet, another young running back, has also run for over 150 yards through the first month of the year. However, he's only averaging about 3.5 yards, a little bit more than that per carry. Not as dangerous as Kenneth Walker, who can really do anything. As Bobby Okereke, Giants middle linebacker, told us during the week, he's fast, he's quick, he's got terrific balance, and he really is good at making people miss tackles. Kenneth Walker is really a terrific running back talent. And so not only do you have to worry about him and Geno Smith, obviously, in the passing game, well, the Seahawks have a terrific weaponry for Smith to throw to. Smith-Njigba, Metcalf, Lockett, Fant. I mean, do I really need to go any further to detail what those guys can do? Smith-Njigba, 7th in the league with 25 catches. Metcalf, 9th with 24. Metcalf also 4th in the league with 366 yards receiving. An interesting number that you do want to keep in mind here is that Seattle, only middle of the pack for as solid as their offensive weaponry is. O-line a bit suspect. They are only 17th in the league, converting third down opportunities at just under 40% on the season. They are second in the league in scoring, by the way, at over 25 points a game. All right. Those are just some of the things to talk about in terms of the state of the Seattle Seahawks. If you're not so familiar with what they've been doing over the first month of the season, again, they are 3-1, having knocked off Denver, New England, and Miami, and then falling in Detroit on Monday Night Football. Okay. Now, in terms of the three key matchups to watch, we'll get to those in just a second after this quick timeout. All right, now we come back and we talk about the three key matchups to watch here for the Giants. And what you've got to remember is that the Giants have underachieved to this point. They are 1-3, but part of the reason, and the biggest part of the reason, is because they've self-destructed. In particular, I want to give you a notation. Sports Radar, which is one of the stat services that one of the major networks that covers the NFL uses, has the Giants down for 12 drop passes this season, which is the third most in the National Football League. And we know the Giants had 5 drop passes last week against the Dallas Cowboys, in particular, 3 in the fourth quarter that would have been a third or fourth down conversion for a first down. All 3 of them were in Dallas territory. And so this is really what's happening with the Giants. They're stubbing their toe and dropping things on their feet and, basically self-destructing in every way possible. So that, in all honesty, that's the state of the Giants situation as it stands right now. They need to get out of their own way. And if they can do that, they'll be much better off. They've already been flagged, or should I say, had 27 penalties accepted against them. And, just figure that out. That's through 4 games. That's 6 a game. That's not good. Well, 7 a game, really. That's got to come down. Can't do that either, especially at key times. All right, let's go to our 3 key matchups to watch. Seattle right tackle Stone Forsythe, out of Florida in his 4th NFL season, potentially making his 13th career NFL start. Started about half of the games last year. And again, he is the 3rd right tackle on the depth chart for Seattle. Because of injuries, he's had to be the guy. He's had a very, very difficult time. In fact, one of the folks in Seattle told me that this past week against Detroit, they had him for as many as a dozen quarterback pressures allowed during the course of the game. That is just a very, very, very high number. And to be frank with you, even Anthony Bradford, their 4th-round draft choice, who plays starting right guard, he was a rookie last season. This is his 2nd NFL year. He's another guy who's right next to Forsythe. That's where you want to attack if you're going to go after this Seattle offensive line. That's the place where, if the Giants can take advantage, you're going to want to do it. And so that's why one of my 3 key matchups to watch this week has to be Forsythe against Kayvon Thibodeau, who will usually line up on the left edge of the Giants defense. Again, he and Brian Burns will flip-flop on occasion, no question about that. But Tibbs will mostly be on the left side. And interesting to note, even though he has not been as impactful with big plays as the Giants would perhaps like at this early stage of the season, coaching staff says he is playing well and grading higher than his stats might indicate. I would say this, after going without a sack in each of the first 2 games of the season, he's now had a half a sack against Cleveland and a full sack against Dallas. And should it be able to be part of a sack against Seattle, it would only be the 3rd time in his 3-year NFL career that he's registered at least part of a sack in 3 consecutive games. That's part of the issue with Thibodeau. Has not always been as consistent throughout the season as the Giants would like. So it would really behoove him to have a big game in Seattle against the suspect right side of that Seahawks offensive line. I also want to point to Jackson Smith-Njigba, the former Ohio State wide receiver, who last week for the Seahawks against Detroit caught a team-high 8 passes for 50 yards on the season. And we mentioned earlier that he is amongst the top 10 NFL players in pass receptions, only averaging 9 yards a catch with a long of 24. But Geno Smith does like to get the ball out of his hands quickly. He is making good decisions and smart decisions. He has been accurate. Smith-Njigba is a guy he looks to an awful lot. The other guy he looks to, quite frankly, is Tyler Lockett in those short passes when they're just looking to get the ball out quick, or for that matter, if he's trying to hit somebody while he's on the rollout. Those are the guys that you really want to look for. Obviously, Metcalf is your deep threat. He's going to load up and throw him a bunch of 50-50 balls during the course of the game. But it's Lockett and Smith-Njigba who usually get the quick, short darts, and then he relies on those guys to help move the chains down the field. You would have to believe that since he is the slot receiver on Seattle, that Cordell Flott, in all likelihood, is going to draw that assignment. Now, Flott's pass coverage has been a little sporadic at the beginning of the season. Teams completing 15 passes out of 19 targets for 79%. That's too high. The Giants would like to see that come down. 167 yards on those 15 completions and 1 touchdown, again, according to Sports Radar. So if Flott is indeed the guy on Smith-Njigba, like to see him do a better job of locking down on him. Again, we told you that Jackson, Adoree Jackson, and Drew Phillips this year were only getting back to limited activities at practice on Thursday, and so I don't necessarily have much confidence that they'll be able to get back into the lineup. All right, our third key matchup to watch, and it goes back to Boye Mafe, who is easily, even though he doesn't lead the Seahawks in sacks, by the way, I should mention this to you, because their sack leader is not Mafe. It is Derek Hall, second-round pick from last season. Hall has 4 sacks, tied for 5th in the NFL, as well as 8 quarterback hits, also tied for 5th in the NFL. But in all honesty, Mafe has been the guy who's been making that defense go. And so he does become my other key matchup to watch. He'll go up primarily against right tackle Jermaine Illuminor. Now, Mafe, as the heartbeat of the Seattle pass rush, they are number 1 in the NFL in pressure against the pass. 36% of opposing dropbacks have faced pressure. They are tied for 4th in the NFL with 14 sacks. They are also tied for 4th in the NFL with 18 quarterback knockdowns. Seattle knows what their bread and butter is right now. They are doing it on defense. And in fact, if you look at their scores during the early part of the season, you know, it truly is the defense that's leading the way, because they beat the Denver 26-20, New England 23-20, Miami 24-3. So even though they're tied for second in the NFL in scoring at 25 plus points a game on the average, well, their defense, even though scoring-wise is only 13th best, giving up 21 points or so a game, they've been able to control the narrative of games, other than this Detroit game, which, again, half of their defense was missing. And Detroit shredded them like Swiss cheese. You know, what we saw was just an unbelievable performance by the Lions, an 18 for 18 performance by Detroit's quarterback. And look, I don't want to besmirch in any way, shape, or form, you know, what Detroit was able to do. I don't. But when you consider that Goff is a good quarterback, solid quarterback, but not an elite quarterback, and yet he threw for over 200 yards, completing all 18 of his throws, I mean, that tells you just how ravaged the Seahawks defense was in that game Monday night. All right, so that'll do it for this edition of the Big Blue Breakdown. The Giants and the Seahawks, Sunday afternoon in Seattle, and we will be back on Monday with our game balls and gassers for the Giants offense, for the defense, and for the special teams here as part of the New York Giants on SI Media Network and YouTube page. Until next time, I'm Paul Dottino. We'll see you then.